I never thought that my own retirement party would end with me realizing someone wanted me dead. The lights were low, the whiskey neat, and the music smooth like it was designed to age you in reverse. A private lounge at the nicest steakhouse in Austin. My daughter had insisted, "You only retire once, Dad." I should have known better when Travis offered to pour my drink himself. He always smiled too easily, like he was waiting for applause. I saw it, clear as day. Travis leaned in toward my glass, just a little too close, then pulled back fast like he'd dropped in a sugar cube. Only we both knew it wasn't sweetener. I didn't flinch, just reached across the table, calm as a sleeping dog, and switched glasses with his father, Dale. Travis didn't blink, didn't say a word. Watched his own father raise the glass and down it in one slow sip. I waited for Travis to lunge, to yell, to panic. Nothing. Just that same damn smile. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't personal. It wasn't about me. Travis had calculated every piece on the board. And Dale, the man who raised him, was just another pawn. He was fine, Dale. No coughing. No collapse. Probably a slow dose. Something that would build over time, mess with memory. Maybe the heart. Subtle. Quiet. Undeniable once it kicked in. I stood there, surrounded by handshakes and toasts. A man they all thought had finally laid down the weight. Retired. Done. The American dream, right? One of them said. Built it from nothing. Now he gets to enjoy it. I smiled. A small one. The kind you make when you realize the game just changed, and you're the only one who knows. My daughter was laughing with her wine glass in hand, her other one on Travis's arm. She looked happy, but not safe. Not anymore. Travis clinked glasses with Dale. To the future, he said, and I thought, damn right, because what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I hadn't spent 30 years building a business just to die sipping poisoned whiskey in a retirement party paid for with my own money. I walked to the bar, asked for a club soda, and watched them from a distance. Dale started to rub his chest, slow and absent, like a man trying to remember if he left the stove on. And Travis? He didn't even glance at him, just leaned in to whisper something in my daughter's ear and laughed. I felt it then. Not rage, not even fear, just a cold, steady shift, like the foundation under my boots had cracked years ago, and I was only now seeing the fault line. He made one mistake, Travis did. He thought I was done, but I'd been waiting my whole life for a reason to show them who I really was, and now I had it. 3 weeks earlier, I signed away the business. August heat had baked my workshop like a kiln. I still kept the old oscillating fan running just to feel something move, even though it barely nudged the air. The paperwork sat on the corner of my bench, final signatures still drying. $9.2 million for 30 years of sweat, ductwork, rooftop sunburns, and decisions no one else wanted to make. That should have been the start of rest, the beginning of, you earned it. But even then, something itched under my skin. Travis had started hovering around that week, talking about streamlining the family's future, said we should clean up the will while the ink's fresh. He used phrases like that. Professional, polished. Sounded like compliments, like he was helping. My daughter called it love. He just wants to take some of the load off you, Dad. Isn't that what you always wanted? No, it wasn't. But I smiled anyway, because that's what I'd been doing the last few years. Nodding while the people around me started treating my age like a slow leak they didn't want to deal with. I wasn't in decline. I was just tired of explaining myself. That afternoon, in the thick heat of my workshop, I looked at the latest draft Travis had helped polish. The estate distribution looked right. Too right. Clean lines, nothing left out. A little too convenient. He called 5 minutes later. "Hey, just checking in. You get a chance to look at the updates? I think they really reflect your wishes." I hadn't told him my wishes. That's when the seed got planted. I started wondering what I'd missed, how long he'd been thinking ahead, not for my sake, but his. How many little conversations I'd shrugged off. How many times I'd heard him use the word legacy, like it meant something you could split up with a calculator. I closed the file and locked it in the drawer beneath the bench. I knew what I had to do next, and I wasn't going to tell anyone this time, not even my daughter. It all clicked on the deck of the lake house. Mid-August heat, sun slipping behind the trees. I'd driven up alone, needing space. My wife and I used to sit out there for hours, watching the water bruise into dusk. It was supposed to be peace. Instead, I found Travis sitting in my chair. He had a beer in one hand and a real estate brochure in the other, like he belonged. "You ever think about selling this place?" he asked, without looking up. "Market's ridiculous right now. Could double your money." I didn't answer. "Or," he went on, "we put it in a family trust. Protect the asset. Start building a generational footprint. Think long term." That wasn't the first time he'd brought up trusts or power of attorney. A few days earlier, he'd shown me a bank account form. "Just add me as a cosigner in case something happens." He said it with that same grin he always used to close a deal. I'd been brushing him off, pretending not to notice. But the pattern was obvious now. He wanted access, control, early. The final straw came that night, after he'd gone inside. He'd left his iPad on the patio table, screen still lit. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. A spreadsheet was open, multiple tabs. One titled, "Projected Gains, Early Distribution." It broke down every major asset I owned. The lake house, the main home, my stocks, even the life insurance. Each line had a valuation, a timeline, and potential liquid value if inherited sooner than expected. He wasn't planning to wait. I sat there staring at it, my hands resting on the cedar armrests I'd built with my wife the summer before she passed. My fingers tightened, felt the grain. I'd carved our initials into the underside years ago, where no one could see. Travis didn't know about that, because to him this wasn't a home, it was leverage. I put the iPad back where I found it, stood up, and looked out at the water. He thought I'd go quietly, that I'd smile, sign whatever he handed me, and fade into soft gratitude. He forgot one thing. I'm not dead yet. 2 days later, I went into the basement. Not the wine cellar or the finished den with the fireplace. The real basement. The one behind the false wall and locked door that Travis didn't know existed, because I built it myself. Concrete floors, no windows. Smelled like old wood and cold steel. I flipped on the light and walked to the back cabinet, my old safe room. When my daughter was little, she thought it was just a tool closet. In a way, it was. Just not the kind she imagined. I opened the steel filing cabinet. Top drawer, original deeds. Not copies, originals. Second drawer, stock purchase ledgers and brokerage account records. All filed under names no one could trace back to me directly. Most people thought I kept all my eggs in one visible basket. The HVAC business I sold. They were wrong. The bottom drawer held the rest. Notarized trust documents, layered holding companies, and a brokerage account tied to an entity based out of Nevada. Untraceable. Anonymous by design. Because long before I was a business owner, I was something else. I spent 6 years as an internal fraud investigator for military contractors. Before I learned to build duct systems, I learned to follow paper trails, find ghost accounts, and make money disappear where it couldn't be touched. I didn't talk about that part of my life much. No one asked. But I remembered everything. And now, I was glad I did. I sat down at the small metal desk in the corner and opened the drawer. pulled out a weathered notebook. Inside were passwords, timelines, dates I'd marked over the years, just in case things ever turned. I flipped to the last page and added one more line. August 8th. He made his move. Now it's my turn. This wasn't going to be emotional. It was going to be clinical, strategic. Travis thought I was just some tired man cashing out. He forgot men like me don't stay in business 30 years by being soft. He came at me through the front door with a grin and a plan. I was coming through the floorboards with a storm. I called Marcia Lennox that Monday morning. She didn't pick up. She never did. Not unless she knew the call was worth her time. So I drove downtown. The receptionist tried to wave me off. She's booked through the week. But I left my name and one sentence written on a folded napkin. This is about a $9.2 million mistake with a spreadsheet. I wasn't even halfway back to my truck when my phone rang. Come back up, she said. 10 minutes. Her office was all dark wood and sharp corners. No framed degrees, no family photos. Just a black and white print of a chessboard mid-match, queen mid-strike. She didn't offer a handshake. Just pointed to the chair across from her and said, "Talk." So I did. Told her about the sale, the will draft Travis had helped with, the iPad and the spreadsheet, the party, the glass. Dale. I watched her face the whole time. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, just took notes, real ones, pen and paper, and asked short, targeted questions. Do you have the spreadsheet? Yes. The original will? Yes. Any texts or emails where he mentions your health, cognition, financial changes? Working on it. She tapped her pen once, then leaned back. I handled a case 3 years ago. Nephew tried to sedate his uncle into incompetence to access inheritance early. Same playbook. Yours is just a little more polished. Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact, but her eyes had that glint, like a dog who just spotted the crack under the fence. What do you want? She asked. Simple. I want to keep what's mine. I want to protect my daughter's share, and I want to make sure Travis never sees a cent, not one. She nodded once. Then we start now. First, I lock down your estate. New trust, new will, fresh power of attorney, medical and financial. All ironclad, all notarized, and all structured to trigger on breach. What breach? I asked. She smiled. The first real one. The one we're about to bait him into making. We met again that Friday. Legal conference room. Cold as a morgue. Marcia had everything laid out in crisp folders, tabs color-coded, like she was planning a military op. She didn't waste time. We have 3 goals, she said, flipping open the main folder. 1. Restructure the will. 2. Revoke any pending medical or financial authorities granted to Travis. 3. Collect irrefutable proof of malicious intent. I nodded. Proof, I said. That's the key. Exactly. Courts don't punish suspicion. They punish motive plus method plus opportunity. You've got motive. The spreadsheet? We'll get method. You just need to be patient. She slid a packet toward me. This, she said, is your new estate plan. Everything goes into an irrevocable trust. Your daughter still inherits her share, untouched. But Travis? He's now in what we call a contest penalty clause. What happens if he fights it? He loses everything. Not just his cut, his wife's too. He contests, she forfeits. That's the law now. I let that sit. The weight of it. Not just a lock, a tripwire. Marcia leaned forward, voice lower. Now we need to prove he's dangerous. Financial manipulation's not enough. But if he's been medicating someone, that's criminal. And if we can show he targeted you or someone else with intent to incapacitate, that's game over. I didn't respond right away, just reached into my inside pocket and pulled out the torn scrap I'd found last week. A prescription note, Zaloplan 10 milligrams, folded in half and stuffed in the guest bedroom trash. It wasn't mine. Wasn't even in Travis's name. It was in Dale's. Marcia took it gently, her eyes scanning fast. You find this after the party? No. 3 days before it. That changed everything. She sat back, exhaled slowly. That's your first breadcrumb, she said. Sedatives before a family event? In someone else's name? Now we build the chain. She looked up at me, direct. He thinks he's playing a long game. He thinks you're just an old man with too much money and not enough fight left. She smiled. Let's prove him wrong. I went back to the scene. Guest bedroom, upstairs, second door on the left. My daughter had redecorated the place since I last stayed, turned it into some kind of mid-century magazine spread. Clean lines, expensive smells, no soul. But the trash can was still under the vanity. I pulled on gloves and sifted through what was left. Wadded tissues, a receipt from Whole Foods, and tucked against the back, the second half of the prescription slip. Still torn. Still Dale's name. Date, 3 days before the party. Same pharmacy chain Travis had mentioned in passing a week ago. Dale wasn't feeling well, he'd said. Picked up something mild for sleep. Zaleplon isn't mild. Not in high doses. Not when paired with alcohol. Especially not for a man pushing 70 with blood pressure problems and a history of fainting. I folded both halves of the slip and slid them into an evidence bag. Upstairs I heard laughter. Travis's. They were home early. I stepped out of the guest room like I'd been looking for my wallet and walked right into him in the hallway. Hey, Dad, he said casually. Need something? Nope, I said. Just left my reading glasses in the guest room. He nodded, but his eyes lingered. Not long enough to challenge me. Just long enough to remember this moment if things went sideways. He didn't know what I'd found. Not yet. Back in the truck, I called Marcia. Got both halves of the prescription, I said. Same date, same pharmacy. You're building a pattern, she replied. One more piece and we go from suspicious to prosecutable. What's next? Find a message, she said. Text, email, note. Anything that shows intent. If he was planning to drug Dale or you, there'll be breadcrumbs. She paused, then added, He's cocky. People like that always leave a trail. I looked back at the house. The windows glowed warm in the fading light. My daughter's silhouette passed by the kitchen. They looked like a happy couple, safe in their borrowed home. But I'd found the first crack, and cracks always spread. I waited until midnight. The house was still, street empty, no porch lights across the cul-de-sac, just me, and that damn family iPad my daughter insisted on syncing to keep everyone connected. They thought I used it for news apps and FaceTime. They forgot who taught her to set up Wi-Fi before she could spell router. I pulled it from the drawer, sat at my desk, and started digging. First stop, deleted texts. People think once they hit delete, it's gone. But sync is a two-way street. The messages live in backups if you know where to look. And I knew. Took about 40 minutes. And then I found it. A thread between Travis and someone named Vic RX. A burner, probably. The number was unlisted, but the message was clear. We'll know by Sunday if the old man starts forgetting things. That opens the door. Sunday, the day of the party. The old man. No name. Deliberate. But he wasn't talking about Dale. Dale already forgets things. Mixes up days. Repeats stories. Travis wouldn't need confirmation about him. He meant me. He thought the sedative would fog me up. Make me confused. Sloppy. Open the door to claim I was slipping. Too slow to manage my own finances. Too frail to refuse a signature. It was a setup. Subtle. Not a knockout punch. Just enough to raise doubt. I screen recorded everything. Stored the video on an encrypted USB I'd kept from my old days handling fraud cases. Labeled it Invoice Archive and stashed it in the bottom drawer beneath spare lawnmower parts. Then I wiped the iPad. Factory reset. No need to tip my hand yet. I called Marcia the next morning. "Got your message," I said. "Sunday. Memory loss." Opens the door. She was quiet a long moment. "That's it," she said. "That's the message." A pause. Now we build the case. Outside my window, the neighborhood kids were chalking up the sidewalk, drawing monsters and stars. I watched one of them spell his own name backwards and laugh, and I thought, my name's not going anywhere. 2 days later, we had a barbecue. I didn't plan it. Wasn't invited either. My daughter called, chipper as ever. "Come by, Dad. Travis is grilling. We've got neighbors coming. Bring your appetite." That tone. The one she used to use when she wanted a new phone but pretended it was my idea. I came. Not to eat, to listen. Travis held court near the smoker like he owned the yard. Polo shirt, drink in hand, easy laugh. The man could host a funeral and make it feel like brunch. "So how's retirement treating you?" a neighbor asked. Travis answered before I could. "Oh, he's loving it," he said, throwing an arm around my shoulder. "Though he forgets things sometimes, don't you, Dad? We've been talking options. Just to be safe." Laughter. Light. Dismissive. I smiled. The kind you give when you're measuring distance, not joining in. Later, as I grabbed a soda from the cooler, an old neighbor, Carl, tapped my elbow. "You all right, Rich?" he said low. "I'm fine. Why?" He hesitated, then nodded toward the grill. "He's been telling folks you're slowing down, that the heat's getting to you. Said you blanked out at your party." I nodded slowly. "Did I?" Carl didn't answer, just patted my shoulder and wandered off. Inside, I watched from the window as Travis laughed with Gerald from next door, both of them sipping whiskey like it came from a shared barrel of success. That's when it hit me. He wasn't just setting the trap for me. He was laying groundwork. If it ever came to court, if anything ever got questioned, the whispers would already be out there. Friendly. Offhand. "Poor guy. Maybe he's just tired." That's how reputations die. Quietly. I stepped outside, joined him at the grill. "Smells good," I said. "Only the best." He smiled, flipping a burger. "You know what they say, teach a man to fish." "Yeah," I said, "but sometimes the fish teaches back." He laughed, not really hearing me. But I was done laughing. Now he was on record. And soon, he'd see what happens when an old man listens and remembers everything. You want to catch a liar? Don't listen to what they say. Follow what they sign. I started with the bank. The same one where I've had an account since Reagan was in office. Walked in, same branch manager, Paul, who once called me a pillar. Funny how that kind of flattery starts sounding like a warning. "I just want to review recent activity," I said, "especially access attempts." Paul frowned a bit but nodded. "Of course." He pulled up the log. And there it was. 3 weeks ago, 2 days after the business sale, someone tried to add a new co-signer to one of my personal accounts. The request was denied, but it was logged. Date, time, and Travis's name. He said it was a joint planning update, Paul said carefully. Said you'd approved it over the phone. I didn't. Paul didn't argue. Just printed the request slip and placed it in a folder with slow, deliberate hands. "Thanks, Paul," I said. "You've been solid." I left with the paperwork tucked under my arm and drove straight to the pharmacy. Different town, 20 minutes out. Smaller, quieter. The kind of place you don't expect to be remembered in. I was. The clerk didn't recognize me, but she knew the prescription. "Zaloplan, right?" she asked when I gave Dale's full name and date of birth. I nodded. She pulled up the file and read aloud. "Picked up by son-in-law. Said Mr. Dale wasn't feeling well. You have a name?" I asked. She checked the log. "Travis," she said. I thanked her, walked out, and sat in the truck for 5 full minutes without moving. 2 pieces of paper. One showing a denied attempt to get access to my money. The other, confirmation that Travis picked up sedatives for his own father days before a family party. Not illegal. Not yet. But combined with what I'd already collected, it painted something ugly and clear. Back home, I added the documents to the binder I'd started with Marcia. I labeled the new section Attempts, because that's what they were. But I wasn't going to let them become successes. I called Nick, old friend, managed the steakhouse where the party happened. We'd done HVAC work for him back when his walk-in freezer kept icing over. Fixed it in 2 hours, never sent a bill. He never forgot that. Nick, I need a favor. Quiet. He didn't even hesitate. Come by after lunch. The private lounge was empty when I arrived. Same leather booths, same heavy drapes. The scent of old bourbon still clung to the walls. Nick was waiting with a thumb drive in hand. Took me a while, he said. Security footage gets overwritten every 30 days unless you pull it. You pulled it? Didn't even ask why. I nodded. Plugged it into my laptop right there at the bar. There it was. Muted footage. Clean angles. Travis standing by the drinks table. 2 glasses side by side. He palms something. Small. Quick. Drops it into one of the glasses. The camera caught everything. Not just the motion, but his eyes flicking sideways before he did it. And then, the worst part, a smirk. He didn't rush it. He stood there for a moment, staring right at the camera like he knew it was there, and didn't care. A minute later, Dale walks up. They exchange a few words. Travis casually slides the glass toward him. Dale drinks. End of scene. I didn't feel shock or rage. I felt something heavier, a kind of silence inside me that I hadn't known in years. Not since the night I sat by my wife's hospital bed, pretending everything was going to be fine. Nick stood beside me, arms crossed. You gonna be okay? He asked. I nodded. Yeah, I said. Because now I'm done guessing. I copied the footage twice. Once for me, once for Marcia. I left that steakhouse knowing what Travis really was. He wasn't desperate. He was deliberate. And I wasn't the target. I was just the proof of concept. That night, I didn't turn the lights on when I walked through the door. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Not peaceful. Hollow. I stood in the kitchen for a while, leaning on the counter, staring at nothing. Then I reached into the cupboard, pulled down one old mug, and made a cup of tea I wouldn't drink. Beside the stove, the photos still hung. The one of her laughing by the lake, hair blown sideways, arms wrapped around our daughter, Caroline. She'd never seen Travis for what he was, not because she was blind, but because she believed in goodness. She believed people could be better, that they'd rise to love if you just gave them space. That was her gift, and her curse. I used to envy it. Now I just missed it. I sat at the table, mug in hand, and looked across the room like I was waiting for her to walk in and tell me what to do. But the chair across from me stayed empty. Always did. I whispered, I never thought I'd have to protect our daughter from the man she chose. That was the hardest part. Not Travis. Him I could handle. It was her. The way she looked at him. Proud, safe, trusting. The same way she used to look at me when I fixed her bike or showed up at her school play with grease still under my fingernails. Now I was just the old man, the one they said was slipping. I thought about that spreadsheet, the one Travis left open like an accident, and the look on her face when she found out I'd rewritten the will without telling her. Because that day's coming. And when it hits, when the truth comes down like steel, she won't just lose a husband, she'll lose the illusion. And maybe, for a while, she'll blame me. That's what tore at me. Not that Travis wanted me gone, but that the daughter I raised, protected, and would have died for, let him in far enough to try. I booked the conference room under a fabricated company name, Harbor Legacy Planning, LLC. It sounded legitimate, boring, and professional. Exactly the kind of thing Travis wouldn't question. The invitation was sent that Friday, a polite email from my estate consultant addressed to Travis, Dale, and my daughter. It promised a private session on multi-generational wealth planning, with complimentary lunch and a business casual dress code. Harmless on the surface. Travis replied almost immediately with the kind of smug enthusiasm I expected. "Sounds great. Dad's making moves." I could already hear the grin in his voice, thinking he was about to steer the conversation toward his own benefit. By then, Marcia had everything set. The room wasn't just a meeting space. It was quietly prepped for legal recording. A videographer was positioned with full clearance. The mediator was certified and neutral, and every document on the table had been crafted to lead us exactly where we needed to go. We didn't need Travis to confess. We needed him to react, on camera, and reveal the kind of man he was. That morning, I sat in the parking garage for nearly 20 minutes, sipping lukewarm coffee and watching the clock. I wasn't nervous. I'd been in enough high-stakes rooms in my life. What I felt was something colder. Not dread, but preparation. The silence before a controlled detonation. Travis and Dale arrived first. Both looked relaxed. Travis wore his serious blazer, the one he always used when pretending to be important. Dale nodded, smiling vaguely, clearly unaware of what was coming. My daughter came last. She looked overdressed, under-rested, and not quite sure why her stomach hurt. I greeted them evenly, just another businessman, thanking guests for their time. "Appreciate you being here," I said. "This is just about getting the right pieces in place for the future." Travis clapped me on the back with the confidence of someone who thought the future already belonged to him. Inside, the videographer hit record. The mediator offered a professional smile and asked if we were ready to begin. I looked straight at Travis and said, "Let's clear a few things up." He leaned back, still grinning, but not for long. The boardroom had no windows, just a long table, soft lighting, and a screen mounted on the far wall. The kind of setting where deals are made and undone. The mediator began with introductions, his tone dry, neutral, professional. He explained the purpose of the session, aligning long-term estate goals. Travis leaned back in his chair, arms folded behind his head like he owned the place. Dale nodded politely. My daughter stayed quiet, eyes scanning every page of the agenda like she was hoping to find her footing in fine print. Then I spoke. "I want to walk through a few questions," I said, "just to make sure everything's aligned before I finalize distribution." The mediator nodded. "Of course. Transparency is key." I reached into my folder and pulled out the first piece, a copy of the financial spreadsheet Travis had left open on his iPad. I passed it across the table. Travis barely glanced at it. "Yeah," he said, chuckling. "Just some rough estimates I mocked up. You know, playing around." "Who was that for?" I asked. He hesitated for a second, just long enough to matter. "Just brainstorming. Options." I nodded and moved to the next. The prescription note, both halves, reassembled and scanned. I slid it toward him. "Did you pick this up?" He blinked, then laughed again. For Dale. He wasn't sleeping well. It was no big deal. "You told the pharmacy you were his son." "Technically not wrong," he said, still smirking. I didn't smile back. Then I picked up the remote and turned on the screen. The surveillance footage filled the wall. Travis, the drinks table, his hand over the glass, the quick drop of a pill. Dale, approaching. The exchange, the sip. And then, the pause, the smirk. My daughter gasped. Even the mediator straightened in his seat. Travis's smile froze. He turned toward me, trying to read the angle, as if this might still be part of some elaborate estate game. But before he could speak, Dale leaned forward, pale, hands trembling slightly. "You told me it was a vitamin," he said, The room went dead silent. And for the first time, Travis didn't have anything clever to say. The moment those words left Dale's mouth, everything shifted. The mediator pressed a button on the recorder, time-stamping the exact second. Marcia, silent until now, opened her briefcase and slid a new folder onto the table, her fingers precise and methodical. "Exhibit A," she said calmly. "Surveillance footage. Obtained legally. Undisputed." Travis sat back in his chair, jaw set, but still trying to keep the performance alive. "This is insane," he said, laughing without humor. "You're all reading into nothing. That could have been anything I dropped in the glass." Marcia didn't respond. She simply placed another document in front of him. "Exhibit B, Pharmacy Pickup Log. Zaloplan. Prescribed to Dale. Picked up by you. Signature included." He shoved it aside. "I was doing him a favor." She slid the next. "Exhibit C, screenshot of a spreadsheet found open on your iPad, listing projected net gains from early inheritance liquidation." Travis's voice went harder now. "That's not a crime. It's numbers. Everyone runs numbers." "Exhibit D," she continued, unfazed, "retrieved text message from a deleted iCloud backup. We'll know by Sunday if the old man starts forgetting things." That opens the door. This time, Travis looked at me. Not with fear. Not yet. Just calculation, like he was deciding how much more he could spin. "I don't know what that means," he said flatly. Dale spoke again, quiet this time, ashamed. "He asked me to take it so he could see how it affected someone my age." He looked down at the table, the shame sinking into his shoulders. "I trusted him. I didn't think." "You weren't supposed to," I said. Across the table, my daughter was frozen, one hand over her mouth, the other trembling slightly beside her untouched glass. She looked at Travis like he was a stranger, because he was. I didn't gloat, didn't raise my voice. I just gathered the evidence back into the folder and handed it to the mediator. "That's everything," I said. "Let's proceed." Travis leaned back, silent now, the smirk finally gone. And for the first time since this began, I saw it. Not confidence, not arrogance, but fear. The mediator placed his hands flat on the table, glanced around the room, and spoke with slow finality. "As a licensed legal consultant, I've reviewed the evidence and will be submitting a summary report. Law enforcement has been notified." Travis stiffened. "You called the cops?" he said, the heat finally cracking his voice. Marcia spoke before I could. "No, Mr. Myers, we didn't call them. We reported a pattern of possible criminal behavior, backed by documentation and witness testimony. There's a difference. You'll find out soon enough." She reached into her case again and pulled out a final document, thicker, heavier, wrapped in a red ribbon. "This is the new trust," she said, placing it in front of me. "Executed this morning, fully notarized and sealed." She looked directly at Travis. "You are no longer included in any portion of the estate, direct or indirect." He blinked. "What?" "You've been disinherited," she repeated. "Completely. This supersedes all prior versions." He turned to my daughter like she might say something, like she still had a voice in this. She didn't speak. Not for him. Marcia tapped the final page. "There's a contest clause. If you challenge this trust in court, your wife's share, which remains intact as of this moment, will be revoked." His face dropped. "You'd punish your own daughter?" I answered that one. "No," I said. "You did that the moment you looked me in the eye and decided I was better off out of the way." The mediator nodded, folded his notes, and pressed stop on the recorder. Meeting concluded. Marcia slid the original trust into my leather folder, closed it gently, then rose to her feet with the kind of calm reserved for people who win without raising their voice. Travis remained seated, no more quips, no more smirks, just the quiet churn of panic setting in. As I stood, I looked down at him and said only one thing. You gambled on my weakness. He didn't respond. Because now, everyone in that room knew the truth. And the power? It was mine again. 1 week later, we sat at brunch. Same round table at the country club, where they used to laugh like nothing could touch them. This time, Travis's seat was empty. He didn't show, didn't call. Word was, he'd taken some personal leave from his job after a confidential phone call reached HR, one that included footage, timestamps, and a quiet suggestion they reevaluate their risk exposure. Marcia had sent it herself. My daughter came alone. She looked different, smaller, older. Her smile flickered on and off like it was stuck between remembering who she married and realizing who she'd ignored for too long. I didn't know, she said quietly, stirring coffee she wouldn't drink. I know. I should have seen. No, I interrupted. He made sure you wouldn't. The other tables kept their distance. That didn't used to happen. I'd spent years here blending in, letting younger men lead the conversations. Now they nodded when I passed. Called me, sir. One offered to get the check. Funny how quickly respect returns when people see you survive a storm with your name intact. But it wasn't satisfaction I felt. Not exactly. There's no triumph in being right about betrayal. Only the ache of knowing you saw it coming and still hoped you were wrong. My daughter looked up again, her eyes red but steady. What happens now? You heal, I said, and you stay clear. She nodded, not fighting it. She didn't ask about the money. Didn't ask how deep the trust revision cut. Maybe she already knew. Or maybe, for once, it didn't matter. We finished our meal mostly in silence. When she left, she gave me the kind of hug that says more than words can carry. A goodbye to the version of herself that had believed in the lie. I watched her walk out, shoulders squared but heavy. She wasn't broken, but she was changed. And outside the window, I saw the same neighbor who once asked if I was slipping give me a nod of quiet apology. Turns out, people remember who the old man was once they realize he never really left. 3 days later, I filed the restraining order. Marcia handled the paperwork, as usual, with brutal efficiency. No drama. Just facts. The footage, the pharmacy log, Dale's statement, and Travis's attempt to gain financial access without consent. The judge signed it same day. Emergency status. Expedited protections. Travis was now legally barred from approaching me, contacting me, or making any decisions related to my finances or health, present or future. He wasn't just out of the trust. He was out of my life. That same morning, we named a new executor. Not my daughter. Not yet. She needed distance from the fallout. Too many emotional crosscurrents. I needed someone clean, experienced, impossible to sway. Marcia recommended a former probate judge she trusted. Neutral, sharp, unbothered by drama. I signed the papers with a pen I'd carried for 30 years. One more signature, one more lock. Then came Dale. He arrived unannounced, hat in hand, literally, stooped lower than usual, eyes softer. He looked like a man who'd aged a decade in a week. I didn't know what he was doing, he said quietly. I know. I just thought. I thought it was supplements, something new. I didn't ask. That was the mistake. He nodded. Then, without me asking, he pulled out a typed statement. Notarized. Clear. A sworn affidavit. He admitted to taking the pill, to being told it was harmless, to realizing afterward what it must have been. He acknowledged the footage, acknowledged the intent. He signed it in front of Marcia that same afternoon. I want this in the file, he said. If nothing else, let the record show I said something. You did, I told him. Now, Travis moved out that night. Word spread quick. My daughter for now is staying with an old college friend across town. She doesn't talk much, but she texts now. Short, clear messages. One said, "I'm sorry." Another, "I'm working on it. I don't need more than that." Because now, the house is quiet again. But it's a different kind of quiet. Not fear, not confusion, just clean space. For whatever comes next.